Hey, it's your boy. What's up? Sorry, I dropped a little weed nug earlier when I was showing off this week's bag. Duct tape by Blue Star, Washington State. All right. I'm gonna need coffee and water, so I'll be right back. This is gonna be. I was realizing that I named these chapters. I think I named these chapters just to just for me, for figuring out where things go reasons, because it's book 1, the event, and I remembered now, book 2 is the Horus and the Sturmvolk. So these chapters are chapters, not books. So like, for example, Revelations was a chapter and not a book, or Boarding the Horus, or Crossing the Gap, or Piercing the Hull, which we did last week. Book 2, the Horus and the Sturmvolk, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Cool. Now that I'm doing it this way, this is book 2, chapter 15. See, this process is helping me get all organized. The arrival. But see, then this is the so I'll say 15, the arrival. No, but then it's part 1. See, this is my problem. I just won't even say the arrival. Just forget about it. 15. Aeana stood at the center of the group, her faith-powered shield wrapped around them and affixed at several points on the interior wall. The hub floated near the blasted opening. A light from the Horus bathed it in a reddish glow, activating its interior mechanism. A series of beeps and whistles buzzed through the intercom, tiny artifacts of the electrical process. A kathunk of shifting metal and the winding of gears thrummed within their bones. Soundless sparks rained down from the edges as a great sheet of steel bellowed down to cover the breach. A few more heavy thuds, and the ship was sealed. Air pressure returned, gravity restored, and a single red emergency light blinked in the corner. The hub The hub dumped feebly to the ground, a thick yellow crack along its hard plastic surface. From this point, they were on their own. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, motherfucker. All right. So, chapter 16. The Arrival Part 2, Chapter 16. Joran held his rifle barrel across Phaeline's chest. Careful now, princess. Let's think about this. Phaeline's nostrils fumed. She'd removed her helmet, her other hand withdrawing a brick of pinkish gray plastic explosive. Her exposed upper arms were as thick as cordwood and as smooth as polished stone. Sweat dripped over the collar of her suit as she stared, half mad, down the length of the weapon to the stoic face of Joran Barlow at her side. Joran waited for the strike of a fist, but it didn't come. How would you pierce this door, then, bounty hunter? Phaeline brushed back a length of coarse, auburn, sweat-drenched hair from her eyes. She leaned back a bit and breathed, chest heavy with exhaustion. Joran did a quick visual scan of the chamber, then placed a hand on the wall near the door jamb. He looked into Phaeline's orangey brown left iris and spoke with purpose. Place the charge here. Then he tipped his head and moved to the far corner of the room. Anytime you're ready. Phaeline shrugged, then placed the charge. The group formed up around Joran and crouched. Aeana wove a shielding spell of broad kinetic protection, as well as an air conjuring to provide oxygen in the event of a catastrophic outcome. Phaeline shouted, Fire in the hole! Silence. Hell yeah. 16. The Arrival, Part 3. That's something. I don't know. I probably won't do that. Aeana! Aeana! She could hear Grundle shouting over the intercom, but that was impossible because once the hub died, they'd lost communication with the Horus. Could Grundle really be shouting her name? A zwink zipped by her ear, and she suddenly thought of whiffs of sapping, synergy, symphony, sourness, savage, savory test tubes, and slavery shadows, and sips of sand and donuts. Zig, 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 clong, 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 zoop, 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 zig. Aeana shook the dust from her hair, her whole body emerging from the suit as she did so. Looking around, she saw the others doing the same. They were like four newly metamorphosed butterflies, coming into the world for the first time as their new selves. Her head ached from the explosion's force. She looked left and right, patting at her thighs as she did so. Phaeline was shaking the dust off herself in a most obscene way. Her tits were like molten golden cannonballs, bathed in red velvet. Everything she wore made sexual by her movements. Come on, Aeana. You're being ridiculous. Joran was coughing and trying to loosen his gear and clothes after confinement in the suit. Sophris, on the other hand, was like a spring flower emerging after a short-lived rain, subtly shaking off the dust of a day of slow sun chasing. Something about him made the passage of time seem gentle, despite the chaos of noise all around. He seemed to drift from one moment to the next, as if he had already occupied that space before, during, and after each motion. It made Aeana smile and start every time she saw him move. Such precise control of his own body was surely a rare talent, further honed by years of training. Sophris touched her arm with a subtle tug, his fingertips like pools of warm light on a summer day. He inclined his head and spoke in her mind. You've been injured, Your Mercy. Forget it. It's nothing. I just banged my head a little. Sorry, I'm trying to make it bigger and I lost it. Um, You've been injured, Your Mercy. Forget it. It's nothing. I just banged my head a little. No shield is perfect. You used the stored oxygen to soften our own collisions, but there was a gap behind you, Your Mercy. Celine, I know you mean well, but the goddess protects her servants. You may examine me if you like, but I promise you, I'm a quick healer. I'm certain that's true, Your Mercy. I only mean to say that all head injuries are potentially dangerous and should be studied by an outside source. Concussions can be hard to measure from inside one's own head, especially if the one doing it does not instinctively think of themselves and their own health, preferring to help others at the exclusion of their own needs. I know my mind, Sophris. She and I have a solid relationship. But I appreciate your concern for my safety. Your capacity for compassion is admirable. To be honest, I envy your ability to express care. Thank you, Your Mercy. It's kind of you to say. I call him as I see him, returner. You're a healer. It's obvious. Sophris nodded. His hand slid from his sides and stuck out awkwardly, as if he were making an embarrassing admission. You are very insightful, Your Mercy. Of course I am. It's my job. They both laughed. The others looked confused, so she and Sophris did their best to stifle their laughter. They did it poorly. Suddenly, she stopped. She threw up a hand and shouted, Faline, what language is this? Faline cocked her head and turned back. It's Alvaribnian, I think, Faline said, sharing a synchronous nod with Joran. An ascendancy-controlled Lunari system. You know, it might be the Ascendancy who hired these guys. Maybe they're here to capture us and not Lord Fancy Pants' precious cargo. She fiddled with some readouts on her wrist. I'm patching the translation into your headsets. This should work. Ayanna stumbled backwards the instant the words changed. Warning, 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 warning. Alert, alert, alert. Danger, 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 assholes! Faline shouted through the blasted door opening at no one in particular. You better goddamn surrender, or everyone is fucking dying today! Pop, 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 pop! The bullets thumped into the wall opposite the garbage chamber. Joran chuckled. Message sent. Message received. I love you, Joran. You fucking goober. 17. Rolling out. The ship was ghostly silent. The power was on and the lights were working, but there was none of the normal noise humans surrounded themselves with. Bathroom fans, music, can openers, squeaking chairs. Nothing. They moved in two groups, flush and hold. Ayanna and Joran were hold, staying near the garbage compartment in case someone tried to rush fore or aft. Celine and Faline went aft, flushing each room until they returned to home position. Ayanna spent most of the wait in prayer. Joran stood as silent as the grave. Ayanna could see why he was such a successful hunter. He seemed perfectly at ease during that period of boredom. It had taken her 5 years to grasp even the tiniest measure of mindfulness required to channel the power of the goddess, and it still eluded her at times. Joran had no such trouble. The wait was interminable. When Faline finally marched around the corner, Ayanna snapped to attention. Faline, there's no one back there. This whole ship is dead. Faline looked and sounded pissed off. Why would a dead ship try to kill me? Ayanna sounded more strident than she had meant it to be. It makes no sense. Sophris padded up to her and touched her arm again. Not dead. More like sleeping. Faline turned to face Sophris with a look of extreme annoyance. He continued, I wanted to make certain, but Yes, there are only 3 life signatures on the ship, but they're so faint, it's hard to pinpoint their location. They're in this direction, I know that much. Jorn sniffed the air, crinkling his nose. He frowned, a great ridge of wrinkly skin forming between his bushy salt and pepper eyebrows. I don't like it. Something's rotten. Faline shoved him with the butt of her submachine gun. Move. Ayanna whispered to Sophris. Are they dead? Sophris scanned the small bridge. There were 3 figures sitting at their positions, seemingly asleep. If they had heard the alarm sounds, they surely would have woken up. But if they were dead, why were they all sitting up straight, their hands on the controls? Had they been posed by their killer? How bizarre. Faline glared at Sophris. Well, what's their fucking problem? Sophris shrugged. Joran stepped away from the group and walked around to face one of the motionless sailors, his rifle leveled at their head. This guy's seen better days. Ayanna came around beside him, gasping at the pale color of the man's face. His hairline had receded, leaving the skin of his face taut and rigid. His nose and his ears seemed to be larger than for a man of working age. His eyes, though open, were glassy and dull. The man was clearly dead, but less than an hour before he'd been alive, shooting at them. What the hell was going on? Ayanna waved Faline over to the center seat. Judging by his uniform and the relative height of the seat, sat the captain, a large man festooned with jeweled finery. A large-barreled handgun sat in a holster on a gun belt hanging near his vidscreen. Faline slowly turned the chair around. In an instant, Faline's massive knife was out and in her hand. With a vicious diagonal cut, she tore open the dead man's abdomen from right to left. His intestines uncoiled and tumbled into his lap. Ayanna reached down to try and stop Faline's slash, then reared up in terror once she saw the results. Where she'd expected to see rivers of blood and bile, there were only maggots. Hundreds of thousands of maggots. The smell was horrific. Faline stomped to the edge of the bridge, clearly trying to suppress feelings of nausea. Joran covered his face with a visor-cleaning cloth. Instead of recoiling, Sophra simply bowed his head, giving honor to the recently deceased. Ayanna moved closer. The smell and the sight itself might have been enough to turn away a squeamish person, but Ayanna was well acquainted with death and disease. The size and number of the vermin suggests he's been dead for at least a week, maybe 2 or 3. The group was understandably surprised. Joran moved up to study the body beside her. Ayanna addressed him. I don't think they were killed here. The bridge is too clean. It looks like someone dressed and outfitted them post-mortem, which makes me think they were murdered or their bodies snatched for this mission. I've never seen the dead employed as anything other than mindless laborers or grunts. The kind of magic that could make the undead perform such a complicated physical and mental task as piloting a starship, it's unheard of. Whatever this is, it's way more powerful than anything I've seen or even read about. She looked at the others. Could whoever hired Creel have done this as well? Sophros looked away. To be this close to the undead was extremely unsettling. Mistral sequestered their dead very securely. Whoever had animated these corpses would undoubtedly have found his squeamishness amusing. Whoever did this, he said, cannot have gone far. The more complicated the skill set of the undead, the shorter the effective range of the spell. If these men were indeed flying this vessel, then the necromancer who animated them must be on this ship. Oh, it's a good ghost ship. Whatever. My roommate was doing something in the kitchen. Are you still in the kitchen? Okay. Ah. Do I won't be afraid? No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Just as long as you stand by me. All right, I'll do that last bit. Whoever did this, he said, cannot have gone far. The more complicated the skill set of the undead, the shorter the effective range of the spell. If these men were indeed flying this vessel, then the necromancer who animated them must be on this ship. All right. Check it out. Dig it for next time, y'all. You're the shit. Subscribe and all that. Listen to all the shows. Shattered Worlds, RPG, everything is awesome. This thing, you know. Peace.